Welcome back to the concession stand. I'm your host, LeBeau. Today I have with me Dallen.
Thank you, LeBeau. My name is Dallen Walker.
So today we're going to talk about It's a Wonderful Life.
Ah, yes. It's a good one.
So when did you first see this movie?
I think I saw this movie years and years ago at my grandparents' house. Jimmy Stewart. But I remember watching this movie and I was a little kid and I was like, what is this movie? Um, we would go over to grandma's and grandpa's house and he'd always have some black and white movie turned on and this happened to be one of them. And watching it throughout the years, I've come to fall in love with it, and it's a really wonderful movie about for me it's about how we see life and things. So I really enjoy this movie, this Christmas movie, and kind of helps me to take the Christmas spirit in and to not take things so much for granted.
What speaks to you about it?
Well, we see Mr. Potter, and he's our main antagonist, and he is trying to make Jim Bailey's, or I forget what his name is, George Bailey. He's trying to make George's life horrible and trying to ruin his life and to take down his business is mostly what he's trying to do, and so he can set up Pottersville. And George isn't gonna, he's not gonna bend to that, and so and also he wants to help the community of the town. And many people during this time couldn't afford their own houses, and this is just coming out of the Great Depression into World War II and out of World War II. And here we are, George is just trying to help the people in his community and help them. At first he didn't want to be a banker, but he did it selflessly, and he took over his father's job after he passed away and ended up helping a lot of people own their own homes. And I think, why can't we have people like that today? The other thing that comes to me out of the movie is when all these things are happening, he loses it. I think it was something like $8,000, but back in that day, that was a lot of money. And he's going to go to prison, and Mr. Potter, calls the police on him, and he doesn't know what to do, and
just this despondency.
It was this, he was feeling like his life was over, and the things that he had built, and felt like his life was no longer worth living. And so he, but sometimes we come to that spot in our lives, and that's quite understandable with some of the things that we face, but we have to remember those that are looking out for us, and be they angels or people that we know, but learning how to look at our lives, even though they're hard, and take things with a little bit of grace, be able to forgive ourselves for not being perfect or for losing money. But I think the other thing too is reaching out to others and asking for help.
Yeah.
There's kind of a lot of things that go on.
Yeah. I think for me, and this is quite personal, I relate a lot to George Bailey. And here's this man that tries to be a good man. He has all these dreams and aspirations of building bridges a mile long and building buildings a mile high, and he never gets to do that, as far as we know. But that's not where his goodness lies. It's where his goodness lies is doing his duty. The thing that he knew he needed to do to carry on his father's legacy and uh, to help Bedford Falls. And um, I think one of the scenes that really speaks to me, and uh, it just breaks my heart, is right after. Um, it's right after he he goes and gets confronted by Zuzu's teacher's husband at the bar, and he goes back to his house, his drafty house. His children are there, and there's models of bridges and buildings. There's no dialogue, but you can see in his face that he thinks he's a failure. Because here's these reminders of these things he never got to do, these grand ambitions that he never got to live out, and he just feels trapped. And it's just through the entire movie up until that point, is you feel that desperation to get out of Bedford Falls and to be somebody. Um, and this movie just helps people understand like what matters.
Right. I really um really think that you know, like you say, the desperation to get out of Bedford Falls, and he wants to do all these things with his life. He talked to Mary that, you know, he wants to get out and travel the world and, you know, build those buildings and bridges, and he never got to do that.
Mm-hmm.
But I think about the success that he had with finding Mary, and, you know, the wonderful children that they had, and kind of having the feeling myself like that's what I want in life.
Yeah.
Um, he's got these kids that, you know, come up to him and says, you know, daddy, daddy, you know,
Excuse me,
and
excuse me, excuse me.
yep,
I farted.
yep.
Or I burped. uh,
But it's hard to see, you know, you shouldn't try to measure success. I think you look at the people around you and see the love that they have for you, and I think that's a good way to see success
mhm.
sometimes. Um, and and yeah, like you say, it's a story of seeing things, the things that matter the most, and the values of that day.
Let's talk about Mary too, because I think a lot of people actually overlook her a little bit, and like her impact on George and his journey. Um, like she was the one that told everyone, "Hey, George is going through it right now. Let's pray for him. Let's do something." She's the one that organized the whole, "Hey, let's get this $8,000 uh, to save the building alone," and uh, their wedding night, they have $2,000 to go on this wonderful honeymoon, this globe-trotting honeymoon. And she gives up that money to keep the building alone afloat. Um, what a remarkable woman. It just makes sense, so much sense, that George would be so desperate to get back to her. Yeah, that's my shtick about Mary.
I think I think Mary is a stellar example of a human, of a real human being, and a caring mother, and wife. And I think George really lassoed the moon for Mary, um,
And Stork several times.
and historic several times. Um, Mary is absolutely wonderful, as she would help and support George in every way. And there's a lot that we don't see behind the scenes, right? Um, but what's painted is a wonderful picture, and you can tell that there's a lot of love between George and Mary,
Yeah.
right? And that's another measure of success, I think. You have a wife and kids that love you and care about you, and a wife that's willing to step in during your hardest times to try to lift you back up. And in today's day in society, that can be hard to find.
Mhm.
you know and you try to find for me, you try to find people that hold the same values and things, and I feel like, that's one of those things that's only movie perfect. But I do like to believe that there's people out there that, will lift you up as like Mary does.
Yeah. Um, let's see. Let's talk about just from a filmmaking standpoint. I think it's incredible the depth that you can get when you actually like look at what happens in that story and um, the motifs. That song Buffalo Girls.
Yep, yep.
That song means two completely different things to George and Mary.
Interesting. Interesting.
So when George goes out to have some passionate necking on the day that Harry comes home with his wife, with Harry's wife, and he sees Mary, and uh, she puts on that song because it was the song they were dancing to and singing along with on the night they fell in love. At least as she would see that they fell in love. That's not that story to George. To George, that was the night his dad died.
Oh, yeah. I'd never thought about it that way.
I
And
know.
that would bring back probably some painful memories.
Yeah.
I remember that that night that she put on that music, she was having a wonderful time, and wanted George to join her, and
Mhm.
and George seemed really down, and I couldn't quite understand what was happening there, but that would, play a little context and make a little sense why. um and it's interesting at the end of that scene, where, I guess Mary was on the phone with this guy,
Mhm.
and um they're talking to Mary and George, that I can't quite remember
Sam
perfectly, but
Wainwright was trying to get George to invest and come in the ground floor of a plastics
oh yeah, that's
factory.
right.
Um, I think it just brings up a lot of complicated feelings because, like, um, so when his dad died, and that night specifically, when Mary came back from college, George sent Harry off to college,
Yep.
used his college money, and stayed behind to run the building alone.
Was that the same night?
before. So
Okay, a little bit
so
before.
Harry came back with a wife
Yep. Yep.
and a new job, and so George is stuck there again.
Yep. And I think this is the scene where they broke down crying, the both of them, where
Yeah.
they realize they love each other, and and then the scene afterward is they're getting married. You know, it's interesting to me how that works.
Yeah, I genuinely think it's George like basically like fighting with himself, like,
Oh
no, I
yeah,
don't want to be stuck here. I don't want to I don't want to get married. I want to go to college. I want to see the world. I want to go to college and see what they know
right,
and do all these incredible things because he didn't know what mattered.
right. Hmm.
Um, I think, oh,
I think it's so interesting in today's society. We think um, that education is everything,
mhm,
and really, I think we are now. Don't let me get too political, but I think we're losing a lot of blue collar people.
mhm,
Um, and everybody's trying to find uh, a degree, a career to follow, and for me, I don't know if it's going to continue throughout a 4-year degree, but I know the things that matter to me is a loving wife and kids, and ever since that movie, I just thought that's all I want. I just want a loving family, and I want to be there to provide for them and and feel loved every single day. Even if my day was the worst day of my life, I want to come home and just be hugged and feel good.
yeah,
And and yet today everybody's thinking you need to find a college degree and you need to do this and that. Granted, maybe life might be a little bit easier if you do that. But what no one tells you is that you usually don't find a job right out of college,
mhm,
and things are always a little bit hard after you graduate. And I hope, as I'm a student, that I'm continuously learning the things, new skills, but I know what I want in life,
yeah,
and thanks to certain movies like It's a Wonderful Life, some, I love John Wayne movies too.
mm, yeah,
Won't dive too deep into that, but there's some characters, iconic characters from the different movies and shows that I've seen as a young kid that have really impacted me to want to be a good man,
yeah.
you know.
I think another striking scene to me. Do you remember when Potter offered George a job?
Oh, yeah. He, and I can't remember exactly what the catch was, but it was like,
Dissolving the building alone.
yeah,
Um,
he was gonna pay and he was gonna have enough to travel the world,
mhm.
and what's
Take
I
your
think
wife
he's
out
gonna
of that drafty house.
mm-hmm.
All basically make all his dreams come true, but literally selling his soul. And you can see that when he shakes Potter's hand and then he just kind of looks at it and just like, I feel gross. And he just wipes it off. Of course, he
Yeah,
takes the cigar because,
yeah,
who wouldn't at that time?
right.
But
What do you think about a deal like that? Would you take a deal like that?
no,
I mean, we know Potter, he's a filthy money lover, but
he's a spider, as
yes.
George called him.
Yeah.
Uh, but I remember my dad once was kind of complaining a little bit about the ending that we never saw, like any retribution against Potter. But it's like, it doesn't matter.
I often wonder, did they ever find the $8,000? Because, well, you're going to charge these guys with embezzling the money, but all of these guys are denying it. Okay, where did the money go?
Yeah.
Is there going to be an investigation? Like, and that's kind of the ending that I wanted. Like, or is something going to happen to Potter? Like, are they going to find out?
Yeah.
And, well, the way things happened, probably not. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, bottom line, it's like the money was raised,
Yeah,
the warrant was torn up, and Potter just doesn't matter.
no,
Like being miffed that he doesn't get any retribution. That's like almost giving Potter a win, you know?
yep, yep.
It's like the antithesis of that character. Like, doesn't matter.
Right.
Uh,
When once you learn that, and once, you know, and I think that Potter can represent different things or people in our lives that bring us down. But once you recognize that, um, once I'm trying to remember um, once you realize that Potter doesn't mean anything, after the money, then Potter loses,
yeah.
right? And so, and Potter's desperately wanting to win and
Own
stealing
everything in Bedford Falls.
and doing all of this. I think it's interesting to see the side that what could have been if George Bailey didn't exist
Yeah.
in
And
Pottersville.
I think it's so beautiful that without George, Mary never marries.
Yeah.
Like they were perfect for each other.
Yep.
Um, and maybe that's some of the sentimentality that critics didn't enjoy initially, which is so strange to me. It's
That is
such a good
interesting.
movie. Sadly, the best pieces of art are rarely appreciated
Yep.
in their time.
Yep.
But um, what was the most impactful scene to you?
Hmm. Well, I think um well, I think it's pretty interesting the first time that George jumps off the bridge, presumably to save the angel.
Mhm.
But then the angel said that he jumped in to save Clarence, jumped in to save George. And well, I kind of think about that a little bit. But at the end of that experience, George is saying and he's praying, you know, I want to live, God. I want to live.
Yeah,
Despite despite the inevitable failing of the business or prison time that he might face. He just wants to get back and see his family.
oof. It really
It's
impacts me that he's appealing to Clarence, this man that he's known, and this man that, to his knowledge, has done this awful thing to him. But then he appeals to God, and that's when it happens. It's just so, uh, so beautiful, and I weep like a child every time. And I think that's why this matters so much. And to me, when I first started uh, wanting to make movies, it was all Star Wars, and flashy blockbusters and
Yep.
action and comedy. And then when I really started to look at It's a Wonderful Life, It Happened One Night, To Kill a Mockingbird, these great Mr. Holland's Opus, these great examples of great men and great people and ordinary people. It changed my entire mindset of what kind of movies I wanted to make and what kind of stories I wanted to tell.
I think it's interesting to go back and look at the movies that Jimmy Stewart has starred in and see the characters that he's played. There's a movie that comes to mind specifically with Jimmy Stewart. It was the man who shot Liberty Valance, and the character that he plays is
He's a lawman, right?
He is a lawyer, it seems like, and he says he's gonna put Liberty Valance behind bars. And of course he doesn't like that Liberty Valance, and then it's him and John Wayne, and they're kind of, doing their thing, but the values that he stands for, education in the community and building up people's lives, and that's just kind of an interesting thing. There's some other movies out there, but you can tell that he has a strong character, and the way that he plays some of these roles, he's very iconic for that.
Have you ever seen Mr. Smith Goes to Washington?
I think maybe once. It's been a long time ago, though.
Oh my gosh. It's like two of the things I love most, Jimmy Stewart and America.
Yep.
That was another one that I think really shaped what kind of movies I wanted to make. Any other thoughts before we wrap up?
I think, Jimmy Stewart has got to be one of my favorite actors. Him and John Wayne, and there's, there's maybe a couple others, but the ones that stand, that I feel like would be great people to have met in real life and to have probably really good standards would be Jimmy Stewart and John Wayne, maybe. Jimmy Stewart's, one of his last movies was
Mr. Kruger's Christmas.
Mr. Kruger's Christmas. And I remember my mother telling me that even in real life, he wanted to lead the Tabernacle Choir.
And he refused a salary.
Right.
He just wanted to, that was his compensation.
Yeah. Yeah. And so it is so interesting to see, I think he was a really swell guy.
He's definitely one of the people I want to meet.
But, the It's a Wonderful Life has got to be one of his greatest movies, I think.
Yeah. It's definitely, it's top tier. There is a reason it is my favorite movie. It will never change. And that's our show, brought to you by Popcorn Fumes and a Prayer. Our executive producer is Penny Pincher. Director of photography is Cam Speed. Our first AD was Slade Clapper. Audio was by Check12. Legal was by Sumi Idaria. Makeup was by May Q Pretty. Our marketing wizard is Trey Lur. Stunts were by Fallen Hard. Script notes were by Paige Turner. Our editor was Seymour Takes. Transportation was via Miles Away. And Union Matters are handled, as always, by Sal Ari. Special thanks to the BYU Idaho Communications Department and for the studio space and equipment. And thanks for watching and or listening. And remember, if it looked good, it was probably done in post.